Tonight we will start with some meditation, just a short time of meditation to settle down and generate as positive state of mind as possible. And then I will give a talk. We're continuing talks based on this book, The Art of Happiness. So tonight we're looking at compassion, which the Dalai Lama says is a very important element for our own happiness. We can have more compassion we can have, the more happiness we can have. So we'll look at that. So let's start with some meditation. So check the position of your body and try to sit in a way that is comfortable for you, but at the same time good for meditation. And one meaning of that is to have a straight back. Sit with your back straight. If you can, if you don't have some back problem. But keeping the back straight helps the mind to be more focused and clear and concentrated. But make sure your shoulders are not tight and tense. So we need to keep the back straight, but at the same time, let the shoulders relax and not be tense and tight. And also in the Tibetan tradition, it's recommended that we don't close the eyes completely, because doing that can lead to sleepiness. And that's really a problem, especially at this time of the day. You may be tired and had a busy day, and so now sitting down and closing your eyes might lead to sleepiness. So if you think you might become sleepy during the meditation, a way to prevent that is keeping the eyes open a little bit rather than closed. Having them open a little bit and looking down onto the floor in front of you, onto your lap. So just have your eyes looking down. And in that way, there's some light coming into your eyes. And that can help you stay awake and alert. So other than that, just find a comfortable way of arranging your legs. And your arms. You can have your hands resting on your knees if you prefer. Or in the Tibetan tradition, we put our hands in our lap with the right on top of the left. And let your breathing be natural without controlling your breath or regulating your breath. Just allow the breath to flow in and out in a natural rhythm. Although it is best when we're meditating if you can breathe in and out through your nose rather than through the mouth. Unless your nose is blocked up, of course, then you need to breathe through your mouth. But otherwise, try to breathe in and out through your nose, and try to breathe in a somewhat deep way, not a shallow way with just your chest, but ideally we breathe deeply, so there's a little bit of movement in the abdomen, in and out with each breath. So try to let your body be as relaxed as possible. Let go of any tension. If there's any tension anywhere in your body, you can imagine it melts and flows away, flows out of you. You can imagine it draining out of your body and sinking down into the earth beneath us and disappearing there. Or you could imagine the tension in your body going out with your breath as you breathe out. Imagine you're breathing out any tension in your body or in your mind. There may be tension in your mind. Maybe some things happen during the day today that you're feeling upset about. So there might be some stress or tension or unhappiness about those things. So if so, see if you can just let it go out of you, flowing out of your body or breathing it out with your exhalation of breath. So let a feeling of relaxation completely penetrate your body, permeate your body, all the cells and molecules and atoms of your body. Then focus your mind, your awareness on your breathing. Continue to breathe in a natural way without controlling it. Just let your body breathe. And then with your mind in a kind of light way, not in a heavy, tense way, but just lightly, be aware of the breath as it's coming in and going out. Try to be aware of each full inhalation of the breath and each full exhalation of the breath. And do this for one breath after another, continuously, as much as you can. So in this way, we're using the breath as a kind of anchor to keep our mind anchored to this present moment and this present place, rather than having our mind wander around to other times, other places, thinking about lots of different things. So it's natural that thoughts will come up in your mind. You'll remember things that happened today or yesterday or other times in the past. Or you might have thoughts about the future, future plans. So it's natural those thoughts will arise. If they do, see if you can just let them go. They're not permanent. They're just passing through your mind, like clouds passing through the sky. So you can notice them and then let them go, put them aside, and come back to the breath. So you can always come back to the breath. Every time your mind wanders away to some thought or memory, you can always come back to the breath. And that means coming back to the present moment, present place, here and now. So just practice like that for a while, trying to stay on the breath as much as you can and bring your bring your mind, your awareness back to the breath when it wanders away. So, doing this kind of practice, even just for a short time, even just for 5 minutes, is doing something for our mental health. It's giving us a break from our usual busyness, the usual busy activity in our mind, which can lead us to unhappiness and stress and so on. It's nice to at least spend a little bit of time each day giving ourselves a break from our mental activity. This is an act of kindness for ourselves and something good for us, good for our body, good for our mind. So, just as it's important to have kindness, compassion, good thoughts, good feelings towards ourselves and towards our friends and our family, people close to us, it's also good if we can try to have similar thoughts and feelings towards more and more people gradually over time, learning to extend our good wishes, our good attitudes towards more and more people, more and more beings, because basically we're all the same, human beings and even non-human beings. Basically, we all have the same deep, natural wish to be happy and not suffer. Nobody likes pain, nobody likes unhappiness, nobody likes problems. Everybody wants to be happy, to have good experiences. So this is something we all have in common. All living beings, all sentient beings. We all feel this way. And it's good to make ourselves familiar with this understanding and try to bring this into our lives. Bring it into our relationships and our meetings and interactions with other people, even strangers on the street or in the bus or train. People on the other side of the world we don't know, but we only hear about in the news and so on. We try to open our mind and our heart more and more to more and more people, more and more living beings, and understand that they want to be happy and don't want to suffer just like us. And then respect that, respect their wish for happiness and to not suffer, and do whatever we can to bring that about, to help them have more happiness and less suffering. And that may seem like an impossible thing to do. How can we help people on the other side of the world we don't even know, we don't even meet? But by opening our heart and our mind and developing more good thoughts, then that does bring benefit to others. It does create positive energy in our mind, and that does extend out from ourselves to others. So it does help others. It does help the world. And this is something that the Buddha's teachings are really all about. Everything the Buddha taught, all his teachings, all his practices are really for that purpose of opening our mind, opening our heart more and more to others, to all beings without leaving anybody out. And trying to really have good thoughts, kindness, compassion, and wishing to help them as much as we can. So see if you can feel even just a tiny bit of that state of mind, and see if you can feel that that's your reason for being here tonight. Feeling the wish that you will learn something here, develop something here in your mind that will help you to have more altruism, more love and compassion, more open-heartedness, good-heartedness towards others, as many other people and beings as possible. Yeah, I'm going to use the slide. Oops, sorry. Have you got it set on the right computer connector? Computer one? Yeah, that one. Yeah. Okay, so this is the fifth of our uh, talks on this topic of the art of happiness. In the last couple of weeks, we were looking at two rather important topics. One was loneliness. We looked at that 2 weeks ago. Loneliness is something many, many, many people suffer from. And it's sometimes even said to be like an epidemic these days, like more and more people suffering from loneliness, which is very sad. And also, it's like a health hazard. The studies show that it's bad for us physically and mentally, emotionally. So it can cause an early death. It can lead to, forget which kind of problems, heart problems, and so on. So if one is suffering from loneliness, it's important to recognize that and not deny it or suppress it, but acknowledge that it's there and then try to find solutions, get help for it. And one of the solutions is to connect with other people, because that's what loneliness is about. You feel disconnected from other people. And so you can remedy loneliness by connecting with other people. Make sure that you have friends, spend time with friends, and just have a good connection with other people as much as possible. And so that leads to the topic we looked at last week, which is intimacy, being close to, connected with, intimate with other people. So that's like a remedy to loneliness and the opposite of loneliness. And the Dalai Lama says that we are social animals. This is what science says. We're social animals, and we need closeness with other people. There may be a few people, a few individuals who don't have so much need for that. Like you hear stories about hermits, people who stay all by themselves and don't see other people very much. And they seem to be okay. They seem to do okay with that. So some people are able to do that, but that's probably rare. His Holiness talked about this monk that he met, a Christian, a Catholic monk actually in Spain. And I met him too. He lives in I don't know if he's still alive now, but he had been living in a cave up above a monastery in the north of Spain. And he'd been living there 5 years all by himself. And so when I went to see him with some friends, some other nuns, we climbed up this mountain and got to his cave. And he was so lovely, so sweet and so lovely. And he met the Dalai Lama as well. And he told the Dalai Lama that what he meditates on is love. That's his main meditation, his main practice is meditating on love. And he's just blissful. So some people are able to do that. They're able to stay by themselves and not be miserable and unhappy and lonely and so forth. But that's not so easy. And so probably most people do need closeness with other people, connection with other people. But in the book, His Holiness said it's not enough just to have relationships with other people. They also need to be healthy relationships. Because if you have relationships and there's a lot of anger and quarreling and tension, then that's not so good. So they need to be good, healthy, positive relationships with other people. And so he emphasizes the importance of having good attitudes like love, compassion, respect, warmth, and so forth. That's a really, really important element in our relationships with others, whatever kind of relationship it may be, whether it's your spouse, your partner, your family members, your friends, work colleagues at work, and so forth. He said in all these relationships, really try to have this attitude of kindness and respect towards the other people. And then Howard Cutler also mentioned in the book that in the case of romantic relationships or sexual relationships, which is what most people are looking for in life, you know, that's their idea of intimacy, is having a special someone in their life. And that can be a source of great happiness, but also suffering, depending on various factors. But His Holiness said if this kind of relationship with your partner or spouse is only based on sexual attraction or romantic feelings, and there's not this other element of genuine care, genuine love, genuine kindness, then it probably won't last very long. Because I think they say scientifically, this thing of being in love, falling in love, and so on, it only lasts. I once heard, huh? How much? 3 years. I read something even less, just a few months. And then it dies down. So if that's the only thing in the relationship, then it's not going to be a very long lasting, stable relationship. So there needs to be this other element. And I remember once reading in a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, and I was trying to find it. I don't remember which book it was, but he said that in Vietnamese language, they actually have two different words for love. And one is that kind of love, like falling in love. And that is, you know, not very long lasting. But then there's another word for love, which talks about a more long term love. So, for example, when two people are living together year after year after year, and they're really loving each other, caring about each other, and you know, sometimes that kind of love can last 50, 60, 70 years. And so he says that kind of love is actually better. It's more satisfying, more long lasting. And so I think that's what His Holiness is talking about, that we try to have that kind of love in our relationships with other people. But it's funny how the English word, and maybe it's the same in Danish, we just have one word, love. You know, we talk about, I love my boyfriend, I love my dog, I love ice cream. But obviously, there are different different kinds of love. So to use only one word for all the different kinds of love can be somewhat maybe problematic and confusing. So tonight we'll go on to look more at genuine love and also genuine compassion that we should try to have in our relationships in order to make them more stable, more satisfying, and more long lasting. And in that way, that will deal with the problem of loneliness, because we can have genuine good feelings with other people, connection with other people, then less chance of feeling lonely. So one issue, just like what we were just talking about with love, the feeling of love in our relationships. In Buddhism, we say it's important to distinguish attachment and love. Attachment is actually, in Buddhism, we call it a kind of disturbing state of mind, a poisonous state of mind, a harmful state of mind, something that we want to free ourselves from, because it's a cause of problems, and it's also an obstacle to attaining higher spiritual goals like enlightenment. So it's something we want to get rid of rather than perpetuate. But then there's love on the other hand, which is a positive thing. And for some people, it's very hard to distinguish these two things, attachment and love. So what do you think is the difference between these? Do you have any ideas?
I guess attachment is more egoistic, and love is more like towards the person, towards my own necessities, I guess.
Towards what?
My own needs.
Yeah, yeah.
Accepting the other person.
Yeah, this is probably the main difference, that attachment is more focused on me. What can I get out of this relationship? You know, what can that person do for me? How much can I get? So you're focused more on me and my needs and my wishes and yeah, what I can get out of it. On the other hand, love, this is talking about pure love, unconditional love. It's more focused on the other. What can I give to them? How can I make them happy? So we most probably have both of these. We do have ego, we do have a sense of self, and we do have needs, and we shouldn't deny that. Yeah, we shouldn't sort of pretend that we're beyond that. So we should be realistic about what's in our mind, but at the same time, watch our mind and try to recognize. This is what we need to do in the beginning: is be able to recognize, identify within ourself, within our own experience. This is attachment. Okay, I can see I'm really, really thinking about me, and wanting this person to do something for me. So that's attachment. But then at other moments, at other times, we may not be so involved with ourself and our own needs, and more just focused on the other and their needs and their wishes, and what can I do for them? How can I make them happy? So the first step would be to just recognize these two in our experience, be able to differentiate them, which could be hard because I think sometimes they are mixed up, you know, and they may both be there at the same time. But just gradually watch your mind, watch your experience, and try to tell the difference between them. And then it's also good to look at, well, what is the result or the effect of the attachment, the more ego-centered kind of attachment? What is the result of that? If I'm acting in that way, if I'm acting more out of attachment, what happens? What's the result of that? And then when I'm in the other mode of being more focused on the other person, more other-centered, more loving and caring towards the other person, how does that feel? What is the result of that? So just observe these in your own experience and see the difference. And it is possible to change ourselves. It is possible to work on decreasing attachment. There's in Buddhism a lot of methods, a lot of tools we can use to decrease attachment. And also there's methods for increasing love. So we can change our mind and have more attachment. Sorry. Well, you can if you want to. You can have more attachment. But if you can see that attachment is not so helpful and you want to decrease it, you can. And if you can see that love is more helpful, then you can increase that. And I love this prayer. This is just part of the prayer, but it's a prayer from Saint Francis of Assisi, where he says, speaking to God, "O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive." So he's praying here that he can have less of this concern about wanting to be loved, wanting to get love from other people, and wanting to give love, wanting to be more giving concern for others. And when I read this and think about it, it seems to me he's saying, that he still has a problem with this, and that's why he's praying. Help me to deal with this. Help me to have less concern about myself, less wish for and demand for love from others, and be able to have more, wanting to give love to others. So, what do you think? Do you think this is something you would aspire to do as well? Is it worth?
Freedom.
Huh?
It's like freedom.
Yeah. But again, I don't think it's a question of denying oneself. Like, if we do have needs to be loved, to be understood, to be consoled, if that is a need there, which for most people is, I don't think it helps to deny that and pretend that we don't have that. Because if you're just denying it and suppressing it, it's not a solution. It's not going to go away. So I think you do need to be aware of your need to be loved and understood and consoled and so forth, but then try to take care of those needs in a way that you're not using other people, manipulating other people. I mean, you can just be really honest and say, I really need to be loved tonight. I need someone to listen to me and understand me. And hopefully, your friend, your partner will be able to give you that. But then if they're not in the right state of mind, they're not in the right mood, they're not able to give you what you need to be able to accept that and not let that become a cause for an argument and a fight and an anger and so forth, blame. So I think it's fine to have these needs and try to get these needs fulfilled, but within the understanding that the other person may not always be able to give you what you need, and accept that. Does that sound reasonable? I don't have so much experience with that kind of relationship. I've been a nun most of my life, so but I have other kinds of relationships with people, and in any kind of relationship, this can be a problem. If you're having demands and expectations of the other person, wanting the other person to be a certain way, and then if they're not the way you want them to be, then that can lead to anger and problems and unhappiness, and yeah. So I think open, honest communication is really, really helpful. And respect, like His Holiness is saying, really respecting the other person, caring about the other person. So if they're in a bad mood or they're not able to give you what you need at a given moment, just okay, that's fine. And accept that, not blame them for that. Okay, so as I say, it is possible to change ourselves and learn to be less self-centered and egotistical and attached, and more loving towards others, more caring towards others, be able to focus more on others. So we can decrease our ego and our self-centeredness gradually over time. So now let's go on to the main topic for tonight, compassion. Because the Dalai Lama has been talking all along how important it is to have compassion in our relationships with others. We need relations. If you can accept that, I need other people. I need relationships. I need connection with other people, and that's important for my own happiness. Otherwise, I suffer from loneliness, depression, feeling disconnected, feeling alone. So we need good connections with other people. And one of the main elements, according to His Holiness, to have healthy, satisfying relationships is compassion. So we're going to start looking at compassion. What is compassion? So Howard Cutler asked the Dalai Lama, what is compassion? And this is what he said: a state of mind that is non-violent, non-harming, non-aggressive. So that's what it's not. Okay, so it's a state of mind where you don't want to harm You don't want to be violent. You don't want to be aggressive. You don't want to hurt others. So that's one aspect of compassion. And then he went on to say it's a mental attitude based on the wish for others to be free of their suffering. That's actually the usual definition of compassion in Buddhism. It's the wish for others to be free of suffering. So that means you understand. There's this basic understanding that others don't want to suffer, just like we don't want to suffer. Yeah? We don't want pain, problems, suffering, bad experiences. So we feel that way. Others feel that way as well. So you understand that and you respect that. You go along with that. You say, yes, I don't want you to suffer either. I know you don't want to suffer, and I also don't want you to suffer. Okay? So you respect that. And then he goes on to say, and it's also associated with a sense of commitment, responsibility, and respect towards others. So I didn't really explain those words, but my guess is what that, according to Buddhism, this means, we actually commit ourselves to living our lives in a non-violent way. That's really a very important aspect of Buddhism, non-violence, non-aggression. And it's based on understanding that nobody wants to suffer. Nobody likes suffering. Nobody wants suffering. And I understand that. I respect that. And I'm going to live my life in a way that I don't make others suffer. I don't cause suffering to others. And when they are suffering, and if I'm able to help them, I will do. I will do so. So it's a kind of really important aspect of being a Buddhist, following the Buddhist path. So he's talking about this. Now, there may be other definitions of compassion from other religions, or psychology or philosophy or whatever. Anyway, this is the Dalai Lama's definition of compassion. And the Dalai Lama also said that the Tibetan word for compassion includes the sense of wishing this for oneself as well. You wish yourself to have good things. So it's not only towards others, but also towards yourself. And in fact, in the Lamrim, the teachings on the path to enlightenment, which is a big part of our study and practice in Tibetan Buddhism, it says that before one can really have compassion for others, one needs to have it for oneself, in the sense that if you want others to be free from suffering, you have to wish yourself to be free from suffering. If you don't even have that for yourself, if you don't even want to free yourself from suffering, how can you truly want others to be free of suffering? So it is said that we need to start with ourselves and really sincerely wish oneself to be free from suffering, and then extend that same wish to others. So having self-hatred, hating oneself, which is something that many people in the West do, not necessarily by choice, but because of various conditions. So many people have this kind of self-hatred and self-criticalness, self-judgmentalness. And that's not a good basis for trying to develop compassion. So we need to deal with that. We need to work on that and develop self-compassion as a basis for then having compassion for others. And the Dalai Lama said there's two kinds of compassion. First one is compassion that's mixed with attachment. So that's like what we were looking at before, with love. The difference between attachment and love is attachment is more self-centered. So the same is true here. In our compassion, it's possible that our compassion could be mixed with attachment. For example, having compassion for someone because of what they do for us. Like feeling, oh, that person is really good for me, really important for me. They help me so much. They make me so happy. They're so important for me in my life. And because of that, I don't want them to suffer. Because if they suffer, I suffer too. Okay. So there's some compassion there, some compassion for the other person, but it's kind of mixed with attachment. It's mixed with self-centeredness. You know, why we have compassion for that person is because of what they do for us, how important they are for us. And so that's why it's relatively easy to have compassion for our friends and our family, people close to us, people important to us, and so on. So when it comes to them, it's very easy to have compassion. We don't want them to suffer. But he says that's not really pure compassion or genuine compassion, because for one thing, the Dalai Lama says, if that person changes and maybe they do something we don't like, they do something hurtful to us, we get into some kind of disagreement with them, then our feelings can change. So instead of feeling love and compassion for them, we may hate them and even want to harm them and do something harmful. This often happens. Loving relationships, they start off, with so much love and kindness, and then later they can turn into violence, and uh, people do horrible things to each other. So this shows that relationship, the love and compassion that were there earlier, were not really completely pure, but were mixed with attachment. Does that make sense? So then the second kind of compassion is not mixed with attachment, but it's based on fundamental human rights. So the Dalai Lama calls this genuine compassion. And he says it's based on the rationale that all human beings have an innate desire to be happy and overcome suffering, just like me. So this comes from understanding that everybody wants happiness and doesn't want to suffer just the same way as I do. And you understand that, you respect that, and it's just like accepting basic human rights. Everybody has the right to not suffer. Everybody has the right to be happy. So it's a human right. And so you recognize this, you respect this, and then, like I say, you try to live your life in such a way that you don't impinge on or infringe on other people's wish to be happy and avoid suffering. So you don't make anybody suffer. You try not to make anybody suffer, sometimes accidentally. We may not mean to hurt somebody, but sometimes something may slip out of our mouth and that can hurt the other person, but we didn't really mean to hurt them. So that kind of thing can happen, but the important thing is to try not to have intentional harm, do things intentionally, deliberately, to hurt others. I mean, this is hard to do, of course. It takes time to develop this state of mind, but we can do it. We'll look later on how we can do this in our meditation. And so he says this kind of compassion isn't only for our friends, our loved ones, people close to us, but it's for everybody, even enemies, even bad guys, bad girls, even those who do things we don't like, who behave other than how we want them to behave, who may even hurt us or hurt our family. So even the bad people in the world. Now that's really hard. That's really challenging. But if we make ourselves really, really, really familiar with how even that person doesn't really want to suffer, they really do feel the wish to not suffer and the wish to be happy, but they're probably just confused. I mean, probably the people who do bad things and cause suffering from others, they're either really confused, or maybe they themselves have been hurt a lot in their lives. A lot of people are hurt when they're children. They have very bad, very difficult childhoods. Maybe they were abused. And as a result of that, they kind of get messed up. And then later in their life, they themselves become abusers and harmful to others. So there are reasons why people do bad things. And according to Buddhism, it's mainly because of confusion, delusions, disturbance in their mind. and and it's not their real nature. Buddhism says those bad qualities that they have and the bad things they do are not the real nature of those people. They do have a good, pure nature deep down inside, what we call Buddha nature. Everybody has that. Even the worst person in the world, like Hitler or Stalin or Mao Zedong, um, these people who do so much damage in the world. So they too have a pure nature within their mind, Buddha nature, the potential for enlightenment. And it just gets sort of covered up or buried under a lot of other junk, a lot of other negativity. Um, so nobody is completely bad, 100% all the way through and all of the time. So everybody has some goodness there. So this is the Buddhist idea. And if we can accept that idea, that can help us not have hatred for the bad people. We can still, condemn what they're doing. We can say the actions that they're doing are wrong. I don't agree with that. I don't like that. That is wrong. But when it comes to the person who's doing those actions, we can still have compassion for them. Compassion. So it's like separating the person from the action that they're doing. This takes a while to think about and figure out how to do it. But I once heard the Dalai Lama make a reference to this idea. He was talking. This was many, many years ago when George Bush was the president, and the Iraq War was going on. And I heard the Dalai Lama he was giving teachings. He said, with all sincerity, he said, "I like George Bush. I really like him. I don't like his politics, but I like him as a person." And for me, that was so helpful, to separate the person George Bush from some of his ideas and actions and things that he's doing. Yeah. Because a person is more than just one action or even 10 actions or 100 actions. There's a lot more to a person than just those things. And later I found out, a friend of mine who also had a difficulty with George Bush many years ago, she told me he's actually a really good artist. When he stopped being president and he was sort of retired and has more time, he paints. He paints really wonderful pictures, a lot of portraits, including the Dalai Lama. There's this beautiful portrait. You can go online, Google, and look at George Bush's paintings. These are actually quite good. And also pictures of his dogs, his animals, really cute. So I thought, well, somebody who paints pictures of his pet dog, he can't be that bad. He can't be completely bad. So so there are good things in everybody, and if you take the time to look and investigate, you can find good things in everybody. Nobody's totally 100% bad. Everybody has some good qualities. Everybody does some good things. So we can still say, I don't like those actions. I don't agree with those actions that you did. Those are wrong. Those are bad. However, there's more to the person than just those things, and we can still have compassion for them. So like I say, this isn't easy to do. It's not something that will immediately, instantly, probably be something we can accept. But if we think about it, contemplate it, meditate on it, slowly it starts to make more sense, and we are more able to do it. Does that make sense? So think about it. And maybe you can try it with some easy person. Don't try it with a really, really horrible, difficult person, but try it with just somebody who maybe a little bit irritating, a little bit annoying. They do one thing that irritates you. So try it with that person first, and then gradually you can work on the more and more difficult ones. So the Dalai Lama says the second kind of compassion, the first kind of compassion is okay. It's better than not having any compassion. This is my opinion, I'm saying, not him. Parents, for example, having compassion for their children because they're my children. These are my children and I want them to be happy and I don't want them to suffer. That's probably the first kind of compassion mixed with attachment. So it's not the best kind of compassion, but at least there's some compassion there. And it's better than not having any compassion at all. Right? So it's better than nothing. But it's still better if we can have the second kind of compassion, which is more universal. It extends to not just my friends, my family, the people who are important to me, but even to strangers, even to bad people. So the Dalai Lama says the second kind of compassion is stronger and more stable, more profound. So it's something that will be able to stay in our mind more long term, because it doesn't depend on the other person behaving in a certain way. Behaving in a certain way we want them to be. We want them to be like that. And if they're like that, we like them. We're compassionate to them. But if they're not like that, we stop having compassion. So that's the first kind. The second kind is able to stay sustained no matter what the person does. Does that make sense? So maybe we have a break at this point, and then after the break, I'll do a little bit more on this topic, and then we'll do some meditation on it. So there's Hello, hello. Okay. So if we can see that compassion is a good thing to have in our mind, we would like to have more compassion in our mind, then how do we do it? So one way would just be to wait for it to come up. Just hope that compassion will pop up in our mind. Um, Another would be to pray, like Saint Francis, please, please, may I have more compassion. That's not such a bad thing because um, in Buddhism there are prayers that are like that, but they're not so much asking, please give me compassion. It's not thinking there's somebody out there who can put compassion into our mind. It doesn't work like that. But they're more like prayers of aspiration where you say things, oh, I wish to become enlightened to help all living beings. I wish to do this and that. So it's more sort of expressing your wishes, your positive wishes, the things you would like to do. And this is good to make these kind of prayers because it's like reminding yourself of what it is you want to do. So we do have prayers like that. As long as we don't think somebody out there can put compassion in our mind, can make us compassionate. Because that's, according to Buddhism, that's not possible. It's up to us to work on cultivating compassion in our own mind. That's how it works. So, so we talk about training ourselves in compassion training. And so this is what the Dalai Lama says. This is what we need to do. We need to train ourselves in compassion, practice compassion. So there's meditations we can do to generate compassion during a meditation time, but then also in our daily life when we're out and about with people to try to practice compassion, being more compassionate. So it does take to work at. And Howard Cutler said, well, maybe that's difficult for some people to want to do that. So how can they generate the wish to do compassion training? And the Dalai Lama says, yeah, it can be difficult. But then he used the analogy of athletes. And so we have lots of athletes in the world, football players and tennis players and swimmers and so on. And they work really hard. They spend hours every day doing training, exercising. And it's hard work. And it's sometimes physically uncomfortable and difficult. And they go through hardships and make sacrifices and so forth. But they do this joyfully. They do this with enthusiasm because they have some idea of a goal that they're working for. Like it may be the Olympics. They want to be in the Olympics, or they want to be a member of a football club, a football team, or whatever, and be able to play in matches. And I mean, there's so much excitement at sports events, especially if you win. If you lose, it's not so much fun. But if you win, it's really exciting and really wonderful. So people go through these difficulties and work really hard because they have some goal that they want to reach. And so they have this attitude, I'm happy to do this. I'm happy to train. I'm happy to put in the time and effort because of wanting to reach their goals. But he said, on the other hand, if you take these same people and you ask them or you force them to do something, you make them go and dig ditches or something that they don't really want to do, they don't feel any benefit, then they won't be so happy. They won't be happy to do that. So he says it's very important your state of mind. If you can see there's something good here, I want to achieve that, and I'm willing to put my time and energy into it, then you're happy to do so. So he said, in a similar way, if a person sees the benefits of having compassion, they want to have more compassion, and then they will be willing to go through whatever efforts, whatever difficulties there are, because they have some goal, some higher purpose in their mind. So he says your mental attitude makes a big difference. So does that make sense? Like if we can see how beneficial it is to have compassion, and being more compassionate will be good for us, it will be good for others, and so on. So if we can really see that clearly, just like an athlete who can see the benefits of, you know, training themselves to be a good football player or tennis player or whatever, they're willing to go through that and even happy to go through that. So if we can have that same state of mind with training and compassion, then that will really help. And then he said if we have compassion, if you have the wish to generate compassion, then there's a feeling of connectedness and commitment, a willingness to reach out to others, a feeling of freshness rather than dullness. So it gives energy. He's saying, if you have the wish to generate compassion and you're working on generating compassion, it actually gives you a lot of energy and freshness rather than, oh, this is hard work and, oh, it's so boring. And yeah. So that's his experience. And you can see that he has so much enthusiasm. And then Howard Cutler said, well, yeah, but what about there's a person who's really well off, they're successful, they have everything they need in their life, they have lots of family, friends, they're happy with their life, and they don't feel like there's anything missing in their life. And they say, so why should I develop compassion? Well, he asked the Dalai Lama, what would the Dalai Lama say to such a person? He says, well, I don't need compassion. I'm happy. Everything's fine in my life. Why should I develop it? So His Holiness said, first he would just ask this person to check their own experience. He said, if somebody's nice to you, somebody treats you nicely, don't you feel good? Isn't that your experience to, enjoy, feel good when someone else is nice to you? And then if you think in that same way, if you are nice to others, you treat others in a nice way, doesn't that make them feel good? And also look at if you are more nice to others, the more you can be nice to others, the more kindness and warmth you will receive from them. That, if you are nice to others, they'll be nice to you as well. So that means you have more people who are nice to you. And that means, if that makes you feel good, if you can see how good that makes you feel, then that will be an incentive. And he said also compassion is a good basis for mutual trust and friendship. If you can have compassion in your relationships, then those relationships will be better. There'll be more trust, more friendship, more closeness in your relationships with others. And then on the other hand, if you don't have compassion in your relationships with others, they might desert you when you're down. So like maybe now things are going really well in your life, but you might run into problems. You might lose your money. You could go bankrupt and end up without much money. Or you might get really sick and need help from people. So if you didn't have compassion as a basis in your relationships with others, then it's possible they won't be there for you when you need them. That's possible. No guarantee. But if you yourself were not very warm and compassionate with them, they may be very caring when you need help. I don't know. Do you think that's true? Do you think there are people who might dump you when you're...
I think often they will do it anyway.
If they're good, oh,
I
dump you anyway, even if you are compassionate.
as long as as long as you are giving someone something as your add to their experience, then and you are a good friend and like that, then they think it's nice to have you around, and you're giving them something in some way. And when you are starting to have problems and stuff like that, then you don't add to their life anymore. You then most people will just let go because now you are no benefit to them anymore.
So that's your experience. Most
Yeah.
people like this will kind of desert you when you're...
Even if you have been there a lot for them.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
I don't say everybody will do But
I can't.
yeah,
Yeah.
many people would do.
Hmm. But maybe then the problem wasn't there wasn't a mutual, like His Holiness talks about, mutual respect, mutual care. So maybe you were being very caring to the other person, but maybe they were not reciprocating from their side. They didn't have the genuine concern for you. And so when you were no longer beneficial for them, they didn't have that strong link, that strong
But you
connection.
have heard this before when people say you only know who your true friends are when you are in a bad period of life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I assume His Holiness is speaking here from his own experience that he has very good friends who, but then he's a special person.
He's a special person, yeah.
I mean, if you have a friendship with the Dalai Lama, I think you would not want to dump him. It's quite a privilege to be a friend of the Dalai Lama. Yeah. Anyway, he's just saying this is a possibility. It's possible you might get dumped. And being compassionate is also good for you. You said, you can always look at how beneficial it is for you to have compassion. And there's scientific evidence of this. They've done a lot of studies and found it's true that having compassion is good for your immune system, and you have more endorphins, so you feel better, you feel happier, and there's less chance that you'll be depressed, you'll be lonely, stressed. So there's evidence of this, that it is good for us, our body and our mind. And we can just check by our own experience as well. If we look at our own experiences of when we are able to feel compassionate, how that affects us. I was just thinking this morning, I had this experience when I got up in the morning and I opened my windows to let some fresh air in. And this wasp, I think it's a wasp, big, not a bee, but a bigger one. We call him wasp, big and noisy. So he came in through the window, and I think he quickly realized he was in the wrong place, wanted to get out because he was banging against the window. And I was also very happy to have him go out because I wanted to meditate, and I didn't want to meditate with a wasp flying around the room. So I took a glass and a piece of paper, and I just very carefully, caught him in the glass. And I really did feel kind towards him. I didn't feel angry or aversion. And so I was talking to him and I was saying, come on, don't worry, don't be afraid. I'm going to help you get out. And I was saying mantras for him. And so I had a positive feeling for this little creature. And it really feels good when you can do that, when you can have good feelings, even for an insect, for an animal, of course, for a human being, when you can have feelings of kindness and care towards them. It's a very nice feeling as opposed to anger, negative feelings. Yeah, that doesn't feel very good. So you can sort of instantly see the benefit of compassion, how it makes you feel much better. Do you agree? I mean,
Well, how to be okay? It's easy to be compassion for a person that you like, or for a neutral person. But what about with a person that you really hate? I don't know. That's
yeah, it's hard.
yeah.
It takes time.
I don't know. I know that it will be. I don't know, but it will be. I would feel better if I have compassion for that person. What about the survival?
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, one thing it's really helpful to try to understand the other person, try to understand where they're coming from, why they behave that way, why they did the things that they did. I mean, it may take quite a bit of time and thinking and contemplating, but my own experience is that's really the key, is just the understanding of the other person, and like I was saying before, when a person behaves in some bad way, they do things that are hurtful, it's usually because they are hurting inside. They themselves are confused, and maybe they were abused. I mean, I had this experience within my own family. Um, I had some experiences of abuse when I was a child, and that was really, really painful for me, and I was suffering a lot from it. But what helped me was just to contemplate the people who did those things to me and how they probably had similar experiences themselves when they were children, and that damaged them, that affected them in such a way that they almost like you can't really help yourself but to behave that way. I'm not saying this is excusing or condoning the behavior. It's just understanding where that behavior came from. What is the cause of it? So I contemplated that a lot, and eventually at some point it sort of broke, you know. And when I say broke, what I mean is the anger, the negative feelings just melted away, and I was able to feel compassion. And another thing that helped me personally with that was, um, I mean, this is hard for some people to accept, but thinking about past lives, and that we ourselves in our past lives probably behaved in that way. And as a result of that, that's why we find ourselves in this kind of situation where we're like the victim of that kind of behavior. In the past, we were the perpetrators. Now we are the victim of that. This is what Buddhism says, the teachings on karma. And it's very hard to believe, it's hard to accept. And again, for me, it was a real struggle to accept that. But again, at some point, I was able to accept that. And that really helped as well. Because then it's like, I know I behaved that way myself once upon a time. I know what that's like. So now I can understand why the other person is behaving that way. And I'm in no position to condemn them. How can I condemn somebody else for something I myself have done? It doesn't make sense anymore. So I'm just saying this is the process that I went through, but it took a lot of time. Not easy, but it's worth it. It's so worthwhile, because when you can come to that, and then you're able to let go of the anger and the hatred and the blame, it's such a great relief. It's really freedom. So you need to give yourself time and understand that it could take time, and don't blame yourself or feel guilty if you're not able to do it right away or even after many years.
I think something that helps personally me is to think about that hates only consume you. It doesn't do anything to the other person. It's just that, like there's a quote saying, hate is like drinking poison and expect the other person to die from it. And I think it's good because it's only consuming yourself. The other person doesn't feel anything about your hate except if you do something. That's
That makes sense up here, but it may still be hard
yeah, I know,
down
but
here.
but it's only consuming you.
Yeah.
It's so it if someone feels hate towards you, it's if someone feels hate towards you and you let it go, then it's only them suffering from it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very helpful idea. I agree with you. It is a very helpful idea,
It's probably
but
more hard.
it's still harder to change down here. But you can have that idea and then say to yourself, this anger, this hatred is not permanent. It's not something permanent. It's not always there. Right now, it may be there, and I accept it, I acknowledge it, and I know it's not going to be there forever, so I can let it go. Because what happens sometimes is we tend to see our emotions as permanent, and then the anger comes up, the hatred comes up, and we may feel, I'm going to feel this way forever. I'm never going to change. I'm never going to be free of this. So then it's almost like we're feeding it. But if you can accept it and acknowledge it, and at the same time know it's not going to be there forever, it's not permanent, it's going to change, it's going to go away, then you're giving it, it's like you're opening the door and allowing it to go when it's time to go. So there's, I don't know, there's lots of different methods, lots of different tools, and what I find is just helpful to try different things, and eventually it's almost like you hit the bullseye. That's the one, that's the thing that helps. So I don't know, does that help? Okay, just a little bit more. This is another thing they were talking about in the book. He says if you don't have compassion, the result of that is that you can become ruthless, cruel, mistrustful, and then lonely and unhappy. And they were talking about Stalin, who I guess as time went on in his life, he got more and more like this, more and more ruthless, more and more cruel, killing more and more people. He didn't trust anybody, he had suspicion towards everybody. And then he became really lonely because he was so isolated. He couldn't trust anybody and unhappy. And apparently a friend of his said, towards the end of his life, the only human quality that he still had was unhappiness. It's very sad. So, yeah, so we don't want to be like that, right? So, I mean, just because you don't have compassion doesn't mean you're going to end up like Stalin, but still, compare, somebody like the Dalai Lama, somebody like Stalin, who would we like to be more like? Which person do we see more as a role model? I'm sure we want to be more like the Dalai Lama. And so good to work on compassion. So we have we don't have much time left. We only have 5 minutes. Do you want to do a little bit of meditation, even if it's just 5 minutes? If anyone needs to leave, you can. But there's a meditation in here. Yeah. So this is a meditation that the Dalai Lama was guiding during teachings. He was talking about compassion. So I'll just read his words. It's a blessing power to his words. So he says, start by recognizing that you yourself do not want suffering. You don't want to suffer, and instead you want to be happy. And then extend this to others. Apply this to others and understand that other human beings are similar to ourselves. They have a human body like we do, and they have a human mind and heart like we do. And they also have the same wish that we have to not suffer. Nobody wants to suffer, and everybody wants to be happy. Now bring to mind a person who is suffering. You could think of someone you yourself know who is suffering, whether it's physical or mental or both. Or you could also just imagine somebody, for example, somebody who's a refugee, having escaped from their country, trying to survive in a foreign country and experiencing a lot of difficulties. Or somebody who is in Africa right now where there's severe shortages of food and they're very hungry and their children are hungry and they're not sure where food will come from. So you could just choose someone you know or someone you don't know, but somebody who's going through suffering right now. And then just try to put yourself in that person's position. Try to imagine if you were that person, how would it be? How would you feel? So, as you are contemplating the suffering of the other person, trying to really understand how they're suffering, see if a feeling of compassion arises in your heart. Compassion meaning the wish for that person to not suffer, the wish for them to be free of that suffering, the wish for them to be happy. So that feeling might just arise naturally, spontaneously in your heart. And if it doesn't arise, then you can say to yourself words such as, may you be free of suffering. I wish you could be free of suffering. Or how wonderful it would be if you could be free of your suffering. So you can just repeat some words to yourself like that, and that might help your mind to feel the sense of compassion. And then whatever feeling of compassion you were able to generate, even if it's just a tiny little bit, hold that experience in your mind. Try not to let it go. Hold on to it and focus your mind on it. Concentrate on that experience. can stop thinking about the person and their suffering. Instead, just focus on that feeling of compassion to make yourself really, really familiar with it, to hold on to it as long as you can. It might also be helpful to imagine that feeling of compassion, that energy of compassion expanding and spreading all through your body and mind. So you become completely filled by it. It's a very soft, gentle, warm, caring feeling. So let it completely fill you. So now, to conclude our session tonight, let's make a dedication of what we've done here tonight, coming together, doing meditation, looking at this topic of compassion, trying to generate this feeling of compassion in our mind, in our life. So what we've done here tonight is really good, really positive. So we've created some very positive energy, what we call merit in Buddhism. It's like good karma. It's the cause of good experiences and spiritual growth. So we can share this energy with others, mentally dedicate it to others. So think, by the positive energy we've created here tonight, may all people, all beings everywhere have less suffering, come free of suffering and the causes of suffering, and may they find peace and happiness, and may they get closer to enlightenment, awakening, the fulfillment of their highest potential. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So that's one method for generating compassion.